All right, we are back and we have a very special guest with us today. He is considered an icon in the world of surf photography and photojournalism. Having documented the famed momentum generation of the 1990s, he existed essentially as ground zero for the Andy Kelly battles of the early 2000s, and still to this day occasionally shoots the world's best surfers on the Elite Championship Tour when we are lucky enough to have him. He's captured some of the world's most famous surfers: Kelly Slater, Lisa Anderson, Andy Irons, Mick Fanning, Rob Machado, Shane Dorian, and on and on and on. And he's considered a celebrated storyteller and photographer in the skate and music worlds as well, documenting moments with the likes of Tony Hawk, Eddie Vedder, Taylor Hawkins, Willie Nelson, and many, many more. There's no other way to put it. He's a legend in his own right. We have the singular Steve Sherman on the lineup. Sherm, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, man.
Well, I'm happy to be here, Dale. I'm excited to do it. I'm a fan of your show, and I can't wait to have a chat with you.
I love it. And you've been a pretty busy guy. Last time we connected, you were on the ground at the Rip Curl WSL Finals. It's probably, you've probably shot that particular venue dozens of times for contests. It's probably shot hundreds of contests. But, you know, this year in particular, when you're entering an event like the Rip Curl WSL Finals at Lower Trestles, you're on assignment. How do you approach shooting that event? Does it differ from the ones you shot in the past? So what are you kind of looking for when you enter the ring on the day?
Well, this year I kind of approached it from more of the viewpoint of a surf fan. It was because I didn't really have a lot of access, so I just approached it like I'm a surf fan. So I was right at the end of the ramp where they're coming down, and I was looking for moments and emotion. And fans, and I just wanted to capture it from a surf fan perspective, and basically, Dave, that's what I am. You know, I'm a surf fan. I'm a surfer, hardcore surfer, and I'm a fan of pro surfing, and I have been for a long time. So that's how I approached it this year, and I just got a lot of reactions from different people, and yeah, exactly. And it's the emotions and the intimacy. That's what you want to get. So that's how I kind of approached this year. I was working for Stab, and I just kind of let me do what I do, and they presented it really well. They had this woman who was writing a story about it, and they approached it more like an art story, which I dug.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I thought the write-up was cool. I thought your photographers, you know, one of the things about, I mean, I say starting to do this job, but I've been here for 18 years. And one of the real perks, especially when I started, was being a huge fan of the sport and being a huge fan of people like yourself. And, you know, before even having met you, just going like, oh my God, like this guy is an artist and he's legend. And then you get to meet these people and then get to appreciate their work and them as people on kind of a different level. It's been such a privilege for me to do so.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm privileged with you too. We were on the front line. We're practically living together.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of times I was with you guys more than my family.
Right. Well, I want to get into that. I think I'm going to save that for the second segment because I think there's some good stuff to chew on there. But you mentioned like we were in the trenches, front line, and had a front row seat to the world's best surfing for years and years and years. I'm just interested to get your take as just an arbiter of what really good surfing is. Like how does the current generation stack up against the previous ones that you've covered, just from a surfing perspective? Like, what do you think they do that's better? What do you think that is maybe exactly the same? And what do you think is maybe something that's missing compared to what you've seen in the past?
Well, I think obviously the level of surfing is so high, and I'm a fan of, you know, I like the aerial approach and all that, but also I like power surfing and great tube riding, and you know, some of the people I look up to as a kid and my influences have always been like Tom Curran and Kelly, and those guys are power surfers, and I think some of this young generation they possess that, and like I watched Philippe go from being like this skateboarder. He flips like a street skater, Well, that's what I saw him skating. Then all of a sudden at J-Bay when I was there, he won. He took his act to the next level of big power cars. And I thought that was really exciting to see him evolving as that. But these surfers are so good. And I think this generation, they're more proficient in gnarlier waves. And, Griffith and those guys, and in Hawaii, they all perform so well in Hawaii. And before you see guys on tour, they'd be good, but they wouldn't step it up in Hawaii or Chopu or something. And I just think this generation these guys are incredible. And also, they're in very good shape. I noticed that, man. These guys have stamina. And they heat after heat. They're like, bring it on, So I think that's impressive too. I think the more of a professional approach to it, maybe. Gone are the days when the Australians would drink all night and show up heat drunk, and that was kind of a part of that generation in the 80s a little bit. But now it's just they're athletes and they're surfing incredibly.
Right. It's interesting too. I'm glad you brought that up because, we're going to talk about your outside of surfing interest too, but you sit at this awesome nexus of surf and music and art and skate. And you brought up kind of like the generation, both the men and the women we see in 2023 are so much more professional than they've ever been at almost 5 decades of the sport. Are there any things about, these 80s and 90s and early 2000s characters that you wish you'd see a little bit more of today? Or you think it's better off the way it is?
I don't know. I used to call it the rock and roll version of the tour, And there's vestiges of rock and roll that was still there. And these guys were surfing incredibly, but they still had an edginess to it. And for me, that's easy to capture. And like with Andy, he was a classic example of someone that he's just a kid from Kauai, but he was rock and roll. But then I said, I'm going to make him into a rock star. I'm going to bring out some visual of him. So he's not just some young kid from Kauai. He became bigger than life.
Right.
And sometimes and I think that kind of comes with just being a little more looser, maybe.
Sure.
I don't know, partying maybe a little bit or that kind of stuff. And it's definitely a little more like this. I don't know. It's hard to say. There's no extremes anymore. You had extremes on that year. There'd be the partying guys and the rock and roll guys. Then you'd have the guys who were just the straight guy. And Kelly was kind of one of the straight guys. He was professional, just doing his thing. He could hang with those guys, but he was very professional. Barely didn't drink a lot, didn't take any drugs, didn't do anything like that. And but I said there was other vestiges of that on tour, which I kind of enjoyed. I thought that's rock and roll, and I keep saying rock and roll because that's one of my muses. I love music, and I think that imagery of people looking like a rock star, or being bigger than life, is something I tried to bring out in guys.
Right. It's interesting you bring that up too, because this comes up on the podcast kind of a lot, and it's not even kind of a ruling either way, but it's a conversation on what I think some people see as the increasing homogenization of surfing, right? In the sense of, back then you had, as you pointed out, extreme characters, across the spectrum. And probably from a surfing perspective, just like a real diverse array of style too, right? You had people from different beaches with different boards, with different wave riding approaches. And it felt like it was really diverse. Whereas now, if you're in Australia and you have a lot of talent as a kid, you probably, migrate to the Gold Coast. And in North America, you probably migrate to Lower Trestles, and you're surfing similar waves. You're surfing with similar kind of talent. And there's a lot of sameness. And I'm not saying that's bad, because at some point...
But you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Sameness. Yeah.
Right.
And there's no individual approaches. But the cool thing about our surfing lifestyle is we have these guys doing that outside of surfing of the tour. Like Torn Martin and guys like that. And like Mikey February, who I am just a huge fan of him as his approach, who he is as a person. But I love the way those guys surf. and they're different, and they're riding bigger, longer boards, different boards, single fins, twin fins, and so. But within the realm of professional surfing per se as world tour, it's definitely homogenized. You know, they're all riding the same equipment, and they're all trying to do kind of the similar approach, except a little bit of different. Like Ethan Ewing, I was just really impressed with at Trestles. I love his approach. But then again, I come from that school of, Tom Kerr and Kelly, where their approach is so technical and so powerful, and yeah, we're definitely in air reverses. There was a point there where everyone was doing air reverse at the end of a wave.
Right.
But I think Philippe changed it up a little bit. His repertoire is just so mind blowing at lowers. I'm just so impressed with him, and he sticks everything. But as I said, the only thing missing from his thing is just being able to charge, maybe at Chopu or pipe. And I think hopefully he'll get into that. Maybe he'll merge into that. But I just both those guys, Ethan and Philippe, I thought I was just so in awe of their approach at lowers. Different a little bit, but special.
I think you probably touched on the right thing there, right? Which it's not a criticism. I think it's everyone is surfing very similarly at the very highest level because that is like the fastest, strongest, most progressive you can surf at. And they're all using equipment that allows them to do that. I think the folks that you mentioned, Torrin Martin, Mikey February, amazing surfers in their own right. I mean, Mikey had a crack at the CT and it didn't last very long. But like they're able to draw different lines because they're on different equipment, which I think is cool because I think they kind of complement one another where it's like, okay, here's what it just is what it is. Here's what the world's best surfers are doing in the Ferraris, and here's what very high-level surfers are doing just in different equipment. It's cool.
Yeah. And as a surfer from my generation, and a little older, I am inspired by those guys, Torrin and Mikey. That's the kind of equipment I ride. I ride a little longer boards and four fins and twin fins, and that inspires me. But I also get inspired watching Kelly. And I also inspired watching Philippe. Those guys, it's that's funny. Surfing's a funny thing. We're always looking for inspiration.
Right.
To get us in the water, to do something different. And that's what's fresh about surfing right now. There's so many different approaches. And both my boys kind of lean toward that school of the Torrin Martins and that Mikey Feb, and it's funny. That's their generation. They're influenced by it.
Right.
They appreciate Kelly and those guys, but that's what kind of motivates them a little more.
Right. Well, I mentioned you've been a busy guy, and you've just come off of Ohana Fest, which is a huge kind of, Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam centered showcase in Dana Point, California. What were you doing there? Well, actually, maybe just for listeners, explain kind of the concept of Ohana Fest and what was your role there this year?
Ohana Fest is a concert. I think Eddie started it at on the South Shore of Hawaii one year. He did it with Jack Johnson, and it's Eddie's festival. He picks the bands with Schmitty, his manager, and there's a lot of it goes toward charity affairs, but it's just 3 days of bands at Doheny on the beach, and it's incredible. I've done it for like 6 years now, and I look forward every year, and I've been very lucky that I've covered it for the first couple of years, and then Ed let me on more and let me cover it. And now I'm at the point now where I actually do an art show. It's called the Ohana Retrospective, where I put photos up from the following years. And it's an amazing, and Eddie took me aside on Saturday and just grabbed me and goes, Sherm, this is about you now too. And it was so moving because I have a lot of people I talk to, and I'm a part of it now. So I'm there with my photos, talking story, and I see people. Oh, I saw you last year before. So it's a very it's just what it says Ohana. It's family, and it's a very mellow concert. There's no fights. It's huge, and it's like rock and roll. The Foo Fighters played the last night, and man, it was rock and roll. It was like, but it's a little older generations, but it's an incredible thing, and I'm very lucky. I met Ed through Kelly, in 2006, and I'll tell the story. It's funny. So I was working for Surfing Magazine, and we were supposed to shoot Eddie and Stone Gossard for our green issue, which is our green, ecological issue. So
Right, yeah.
I'm supposed to meet Ed the next day. So I'm at the concert, and it's J-Bay is going to start in 3 days. So I'm upstairs watching the concert, and all of a sudden he goes, "Okay, I'm going to pull someone out who's the 5-time world champ, Kelly Slater." And I look at my watch and go, "He has a heat in J-Bay tomorrow." And what he did was he blew the heat off the losers round so he could go jam with Kelly. So I see Kelly, and so I see afterwards, he's like, "Hey, sure, you want to go meet Ed?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So he pulls me back into the area, and there's Eddie Vedder. And they say beware meeting your heroes, because he's one of my favorite people. But he was a sweetheart, and Kelly introduced me, and he goes, "Oh, I know you. I know what Sherm does. Sherm, I know exactly." He was a fan because he's a surf fan, and he knows so much about pro surfing. So I from that point on, I was friends with him, and he lets me shoot photos. And I saw him in Australia a couple times. I saw him in Brazil, all following the tour. So the rock and roll worlds combined. So we go backstage, and we're bringing CJ Hobgood backstage to Ed. So it's been this convergence of that. And so anyway, he's just a good friend, and I'm very lucky to have and be able to capture him. And this was all time. I got to shoot the Earthlings, photos of him, and yeah, I'm a rock and roll fan, like a surf fan, and rock and roll is my muse. So that's what I do with him, and it was all time.
That's awesome. And then by the time this episode airs, you would have done your War and Peace project at the Boardroom show in Del Mar. So how did that come to be? And tell the listeners what to expect from that.
Okay, so I've documented Andy and Kelly very intimately during their whole world, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I was just as good of friends with Andy as just as good friends with Kelly. So I had access to both of these guys. So, and I was working for the Surf Mags at the time. So I'm going from world to world, and they didn't really hang out a lot, but I was just going back and forth. So I have all this library of stuff from the beginning. So last year I was going to go to Bali with my boys right after the COVID. So I had this concept. I'm going to do a slideshow there, and a talk story and art show. I'm going to call it War and Peace, because that's what it was. Kelly and Andy, they were at war, and then at the end, they became friends, and and there's a picture I have that sums it up. I was in Queens, and I think it was around 2009, and I'm having a beer and at the pub, and I look down there, and there's Kelly and Andy talking intimately. And I'm like, "Oh my God, what is this?" So I rush down there, and they're just talking, and I go, "Hey man," I go, "You guys, let's do a photo." So they put their arms around each other, and I'm going, "Oh my God, what world is this?" And then Kelly gives a peace sign. And it was like, and I shot the photo in the house where they were going at it. So it was almost like a full circle for me. And it was emotional because they had come around. So that was the war, and they had made peace. So I decided to do a slideshow. So the slideshow is all my best images of them. And I do about 12 images for sale. And I do a slideshow or a talk story, and I talk it. I did it in Bali at Rizal's place. I had like 200 people there, and then I did the Belly Up Tavern when I came back last year, and I headlined it with my band, and it was amazing. So people love it, and I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. I tell everything that happened, and people just suck it up. So I'm doing that at Del Mar at the Boardroom. From my friend Scott Bass has a little trade show he does there, and I'm really excited because there'll be a lot of people there, and youth, but I really love telling the stories because people really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And to kind of bring it full circle to what you mentioned at the start with Andy, and you said, look, like I came from a music background. Andy's this kid essentially from the country there in Kauai, and you kind of teased some of the rock star visuals out of those photo shoots with Andy. And I was going to ask you at the time, but I think it's appropriate with the War and Peace topic too, since you were there. How much of that was legit? Like how much of they're really at war with one another and Andy's really a rock star? how much of that was authentic and how much of it was maybe a little bit of like media marketing, like driving that kind of competitive narrative and creating archetypes out of them? How much do you think was either or?
Okay, well, first off, to address, Andy was rock and roll. He lived life like a rock star. He was full of energy. He could go fifth gear. He liked to party. He loved being with people. He liked having a good time. So that's where I kind of knew about it. That's why I decided to kind of create a persona with him. But him and Kelly were definitely at war. And I think it was more of Andy was a little more aggressive than Kelly was, because Andy was a little more jealous of Kelly, I think, because he's older and he's got all these accolades, and Kelly and Andy was always going, F Kelly, and he's always saying that, and I hate that white wetsuit, and he would get so worked up about Kelly. So it was definitely true, and I saw a lot of it firsthand, and then I hear the stuff I didn't even know until he passed away. People tell me, I hear all these stories about these guys, having fights on boats and punching each other, and Kelly going, "Oh man, I got so many good hits in on him. He fell out of the boat. I'm on the boat," because they were going at it, and I was like, "What? Andy? You're telling me, Kelly? You're telling me about the punches you got in on him, because he got punched, so they actually came to blows." But but the beauty of that was toward the end, they let it go, and Kelly told me after we passed away, he goes, he really loved him and he cared about him, and he was worried about him and he cared about him deeply, and I just found the whole thing beautiful, how it came full circle. And at the end, I'm really glad that before he died, they came to a place where they respected each other, and they would talk and go surfing together and stuff. So for me, that was very emotional, because as I said, I was on the front line of the war, and it was a war,
right?
And it was tough being tough being friends with both of them. I'm going to both worlds, so But the slideshow is very fun to tell, and sometimes I get emotional. People get emotional because things will come back, and as I said, I miss him. Everyone misses him, and but I truly believe what I do helps keep his thing going a little bit. And I know Lindy trusts me 100%. I told her one time, I go, Lindy, I take my archive very seriously to him, and I'll never do anything with him without asking her. So I get her blessing in all this stuff. So as I feel like that's part of my role, is to keep him going, So that's part of this.
I love it. We're going to get to a few more topics, but first we're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. This is The Lineup. I'm Dave Prodan. I'm here with photojournalism icon Steve Sherman. Sherm, we have a ton of listeners to this podcast, and so many of them they always want to know, like, how'd you get to this point in your life? How'd you get there? And I always think that the answer should always start all the way back at the beginning, because everyone's path is different. Everyone's kind of the ingredients that make them who they are different. And so tell us a little bit about, where you grew up, like where were you born, raised? What was your family life like? What did mom and dad do? How did you come into the world?
I came into the world, I was born in Indiana, Elwood, Indiana. And that's where my grandmother and grandpa Farrells lived. About 10 miles from Fairmont, where James Dean was raised. So I was born in Elwood, then we lived in Indianapolis. And I was just a sports kid. I played baseball, Pop Warner, till I was 11 years old. And my dad was working for Fairchild Semiconductor, and he got transferred to California in 1974. So we fly to California, and that last year in Indiana, I was looking for a skateboard. For some reason, we could not find a skateboard anywhere in Indiana. So the first thing we do, we get to California. My mom we go to the toy store, and my sister got a steel wheel, and I got a clay wheel board. And that was the first thing I got in California, and that changed my life. I started skateboarding, obsessing with it. And we lived in Poway. So, and then I was playing football, and so I started skateboarding, and then I got pretty good at skateboarding. And then my parents moved to the coast in Solana Beach, and I started racing skateboards at La Costa, which is right where I live now. And I immediately got sponsored. So I was riding for G&S skateboards with Stacy Peralta. I was on the GS team, so I was a pro skater at 14. So I had that world. So I mean, I'm in junior high, and I'm kind of famous because I'm in Skateboarder magazine. I had a Who's Hot, and all of a sudden I went from no one knowing me, all of a sudden being very popular for that. But so then I'm surfing and skateboarding, and I went, in high school I was on the school paper, and I was very good at black and white photography. I learned that in junior high, so I was on the school paper, and then when I got out of high school, I took some college classes, but all I really wanted to do was surf. I was a surfer. I was just a surf bum. And but then I got in my mid-20s, I got a job with Grant Britton at Transworld Skateboarding as a darkroom tech. So I started working and shooting for the skate mag. Eventually I worked my way out of the darkroom, and I'm shooting for the skateboard magazine, making a living off photography. And I did that for a while. And then, but I always had, as a surfer, Breakout Magazine was the big magazine, and I told Kevin Keener, I go, I want to work for the magazine, but I want to shoot the people photo. I had this vision in like early 80s. I want to do this. But then I'm doing the skate magazine, and then finally I work for Pal Peralta shooting videos. I remember one day, like early 90s, I'm sitting in a ditch filming skateboarding, and I go, man, I don't want to do this anymore. It's just, I don't want to climb over school fences. And so Nick Carroll was at surfing, so I kind of worked my way over that direction and started shooting portraits and stuff. Next thing you know, I'm doing that. And then Transworld Skateboarding magazine I was working for decided to make a surf magazine. This is in 1999. So, and Chris Cote was going to be the editor, and they hired me as photo editor. So then I'm really making a surf magazine. That began my world really in making magazines. So then I worked at surfing and covering pro surfing. So that's kind of where it came from. This whole time, I'm a hardcore surfer. And the funny thing is, I became a famous surf photographer, but not really shooting a lot of surfing. I met my own niche, photojournalism, fashion work. And that's when I started, following with, the boys on tour and stuff. I got a lot of street cred because I was surfing with them every morning. And when the waves are good, I'm not sitting on the beach with the creepy surf photographers. I'm surfing. So anyway, that was fun. This time at Snapper, I'm flying down the line, and first Andy heckles me, "F***ing Sherman!" And then Bruce heckles me on the inside because I got a set wave. And that's kind of the reason why I do this. And I used to travel the world with boards, and all these surf photographers going, "Man, why do you bring boards everywhere?" I go, "Dude, I don't do this not to surf." So I come from a surf perspective, and I made this world where I didn't have to. I still shoot action stuff, but I didn't have to shoot it. So that in a nutshell. And then I kind of broke into the music stuff after that. But as I said, I do this because I'm a hardcore surfer still, and I still am.
Right.
And I love.
I just love the idea. Oh, go on.
No,
you go.
I don't play tennis. I don't play golf. I like fast surfboards. That's it.
I love the idea and how you said, I got my start working in the dark room as, a dark room tech. And I mean, you're slightly older than me, not too much, but when I started and I was writing for Evan Slater at Surfing Magazine, there was a physical brick and mortar office, and they had desks, and they had people, and they had a dark room, and and they probably had a dark room tech, and we're talking about an era with Larry Moore and Pete Terrace, Grant Ellis, Jeff Devine, like yourself, Art Brewer, just like people who like superstar photographers at a time where everything was and everything. I remember as a kid, like just reading the magazines and looking at the photos, it felt like it was just a hugely functional business, right? You probably had staff that worked at Trans World Surfing. You probably had budget to go travel around the world, and you had a boss, and they're like, yeah, of course we're going to send a journalist and a photographer to cover this happening that's going on wherever it is. And
this
obviously
is a lifestyle.
I don't want to get I don't want to get nostalgic, because like there's not a whole lot of value.
But it's true,
in that,
though.
But it's
a
like,
lot of kids they don't know about this.
And it worked. That's my point. And that's my point. Like kids that are like, oh, I want to be a surf photographer. And you're like, well, I got my start as a darkroom tech at Trans World Surf. It's like, there's no Trans World Surf. There's no magazines. There's no dark rooms. There's no darkroom techs. Like, it's just changed so much in such a short period of time.
Radically. And the cool thing about that is that's missing now. When you get an office like that, can you imagine the creativity that when these people get together and we talk? I mean, it's an amazing thing. You have a good art director, a good editor, and you're going like this, and everything rises up. And that's one of my fortes when I was working at the magazines. I was really good at coming up with ideas for articles and concepts like that. And I think now you don't have these offices where people are together, living together. I mean, I saw Evan Slater and Chato, my art director, more than I saw my wife. I was living, 60 hours a week. It was crazy, and then that was a beautiful era. But it's pretty hard for kids to even understand that. But I grew up with skateboard and surfing magazines. That was one of the most important things to me. I got them I'd buy it as soon as I got it, just tear it apart, read it. So when I came on doing this stuff, I kind of had a crash course in publishing without going to college, because I knew all about the magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah. Is there a huge difference since you've existed in both worlds, is there a huge difference in the way that skating is shot to surfing, do you think?
It's a little more urban, street. You're dealing with different environments. And also with skateboarding, you can always just go out and shoot and do it. With surfing, you're waiting for good waves. But the only thing that changed with that was when we were shooting street skating, and you're trying to shoot a trick over and over. Sometimes you shoot the same trick for a couple days and sit there for a couple hours and not make it, and then one clip he makes it. So it's kind of similar to surfing. Oh, the waves got good for that hour. And it's a little similar thing. I just found the skateboarders were a little smarter, more artistic, and it was just a little, and so coming from the skate magazines into surfing as being a skateboarder, I had a fresh outlook. And that's when we did Transworld, we came at it a different way. Me and Cote and Steve Zeldin. And we changed surf publishing, a little bit. And when I came on surfing after that, doing that, we took some of that and mixed it in. But yeah, I mean, that's just a beautiful era, and I'm very lucky to have gone through that. But I just wonder nowadays, just like cameras have come back, film, will magazines come back, But and I just wonder, do these kids don't know about opening a big magazine and putting the photo on their wall, or you get a poster in a surf magazine and you put that on your wall. Every month you get something that motivates you to surf, and I ask these kids, what do you guys put on your walls? But it's different. But we'll see. Maybe that'll come back around, maybe on a different level. But I have to think it will come back, because nothing like having a surf magazine sitting around your house for 5 years. You can always go back to it. It's hard to go back to surf photos on your iPhone.
Yeah, I wonder about, the surf magazine one's interesting. I like what the other thing you pointed at's probably the thing I hope comes back in some form, and that's like the alchemy of having creative forces get together and have conversations and talk about topics and generate insights and then create something, maybe it is a magazine again, you know what I mean? But it feels like whether you go and visit the brands, or you go to surf shops, or you go to talk to the media folks, it feels like that aspect of just having the time and space to interact and be wrong and be humble about it, or be, have a difference of opinion and create something out of that doesn't really exist. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
and it's a cliche word, but synergy. I mean, at Surfing Magazine, when I did that with Evan and Shadow for that, 3 years, man, it was such a rush because we would come up with such good idea and make these magazines. At the end, you do this art project all month, and the next thing you know, you have it in your hand. And then you get to take it and hand it out. And people are so excited about, oh my God, a new surf magazine. And it's, yeah, but the idea of people creatively, great creative minds working together is so strong. It probably still exists at maybe at like, clothing companies or stuff, maybe. I think that's still that environment where there's a lot of people doing the same thing, but visuals and for surfing like that don't really exist, maybe, as much. So I think we're missing that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I totally agree. One of the other things you said I thought was interesting was you compared surfers and skaters and talked about, in your experience, surfers are a little bit more creative. And I wonder if that has to do with the other thing you said where, the rail or the hip or the ramp or the bowl or whatever they're skating, it's always there, right? And so they can kind of go, I'm going to put my energy into that when I feel ready. And then when I'm not, I'm doing other things. Whereas, speaking as a surfer, I'm sure you feel this too. I always crack up at the amount of energy I expend on going, where's the sandbar? What's the tide doing? Is the swell right?
Yeah.
What's the wind doing? It's like an all day thing to the point where you're not even thinking about it. You're exhausted. Yeah, exactly. Right. And you're like, man, it's just so much more efficient to be like a skater or something where you're like, you're not chasing this finite resource. Yeah.
It's a lot easier to shoot. Street skating, vert skating was really easy to shoot, I think. But street skating was something that got so technical and also it's very outlaw. You're getting in a lot of trouble, and it's the most you're trespassing, and you're going to handrails aren't supposed to be shot. It's almost like a guerrilla act. Okay, there's this handrail. We're gonna go there. We're gonna do it for 5 minutes. Be ready to go. You get in there, boom, 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 and then the security guy comes, kicks you out, and so that it's just another urban aspect of skateboarding that I was really attracted to. It's rebellious.
It makes sense.
And yeah, and as I say, you try to get this sequence of something or a video clip, and you get it. I mean, it's an adrenaline rush, but it's only like this, 6-7 seconds. Same thing with a surf photo, though.
Right. No, I got you there. Well, you mentioned before, obviously you can shoot action, but you early on identified your niche, the voice that was going to be consistent in your photography, which made it stand out. Where did that come from? Like, did you have inspirations in terms of other artists and photographers, or did you just start shooting and go, this is what excites me?
I think I was always excited. Like, as I said, when I was in high school, I was on the school paper, so I was a photojournalist, and I always was attracted to shooting. So something happened when the hostages came back from Iran. This guy who was living in San Diego, he came back. So, and I think I'm a senior, and my journalism teacher goes, "Hey, you should go down and shoot him coming back." So I went down to his cul-de-sac where he's going to come in a limousine. So I go down there, and it's raining, and I'm going to capture this, And as I'm sitting in it, so I go up on a hill next to it with my long lens to check out angles, and I had the Secret Service apprehend me and hey, what are you doing? They're convinced I was a terrorist. So that was the beginning of that. But anyway, so I had like 2 spreads, and it was the first time I'd captured something that was photojournalism, and it got on my skin. My dad did that in high school too, so I have it in my DNA. So I've always enjoyed, the decisive moment. Henri Cartier-Bresson, the famous French photographer, he called it the decisive moment. And that's a 1/25th of a second. And everyone has a different way of approaching to get that, or their timing of it. And something I have a real knack for is just capturing moments. Things happen. I have a great intuition. And I don't think you can teach that. I talked to a lot of kids about it, and I said, this is what it is. And I kept thinking in the surfing world that someone was going to come up, a young guy was going to have it, But no one really had that same drive or the same perspective I had of capturing stuff, whether it be anyone, not just surfers, but anyone. I can shoot families and I shoot weddings and I kill it because I have this intuitive, oh my God, it's going to happen. Like I remember one time I was in Portugal and it was when the ASP was big, and the guys took me aside to listen, Sherman, we got to tell you, we follow you. And the directors go, okay, Sherman's going to go over here. Be ready. He's going to do something, because I had a different perspective on it, and also I knew what to expect, and so I thought that I was really happy. That would really make me happy. Like, hey, I must be doing something right if these guys, the cameras are following me, knowing that I'm going to see something happen or capture it.
I'm glad you brought that up, Sherm, because earlier in the podcast, you were talking about, access. And when you and I first met, I was working in media. I was, one of the 5 people at the ASP. We'd be on site at events. And my job was a lot of things, but one of the things was kind of facilitating, interviews and photos and access and press releases between the surfers at events and the media. And it was a delicate dance. And often I would have surfers come to me and say, I've got an issue with that photographer. I got an issue with that journalist. I need to keep them out, keep them away from me. And I'm like, all right. But the thing that always struck me about you is you were the only person in surf media who I would actively have surfers coming to me and being like, I need Sherman here. I want Sherman following me there. I want Sherman there.
Okay, well,
and I think that you thought that was going to go another way. But no, I bring it up because
I appreciate that,
because so much of your body of work are these really intimate and in a way vulnerable moments with superstars, and that only happens with like a very high degree of trust. So can you talk to us a little bit about that, and also how you kind of walk that line between friendship and professional relationship sometimes, because it's not easy.
No,
right?
It's not. Well, the first thing I'll say is what I do is 70% social skills, easily. And people go, oh, that sounds weird, but because technically we're all doing the same thing. Camera and photography is very basic math. But how if you have to know you're creative, but to be able to get to the place where you're able to do what you do with people, it's social skills, and like, I don't know, man. I'm just very lucky that I'm able to talk with people, and I'm pretty confident with people, and also I'm confident with what I do. And if people don't notice about me, but I work very quickly. If you ask anyone, a lot of these pros, they go, "That's it? Oh, you're done?" And they always say that was painless, because photographers tend to create a lot of pain on people. Okay, I want one more shot. Wait a minute. And then they wait. And I think that's one thing I had going with a lot of these young surfers is they already were kind of shy, but I was able to make them feel at ease. And but as you were saying about friendship, that's another thing that's kind of weird. You're close to these guys, and something weird happens, and sometimes you got to be able to be willing to take the shot and then deal with the consequences. And I don't get in trouble a lot doing that, but I'm very sensitive. I'm a hypersensitive person, so I'm very aware of feelings. But there's sometimes as a photojournalist, I can get pretty cold and just go for it.
Right.
Like, I have so many photos of Taj Burrow crying in a corner after Kelly beat him.
Right.
And people, things like that, or someone's throwing a board and breaking it, or an emotional moment. I had a shot of Shane Beshan at Sunset, and he had just got knocked off the tour. He'd been on the tour for his whole life, and he's sitting there and he's got his hands in his face, and he's crying. And I shot it far back, very emotional photo. And Beshan came up to me about 5 years and goes, "Man, Sherm, I love that photo." And he goes, I don't know if I liked it when it happened, but dude, I appreciate that. And that just made me feel so good. But I had moments, one time, like when we had this moment with Kelly at the Red Bull house. He walked in and he claimed he was looking for Damien to play golf. He had his golf shirt on, and he walks in the house and he's looking around, and I guess Damien's not here. And then he walks out and Andy freaks out, and it was just one of those things where, and I happened to I had my camera ready to go. So he walks in and there's Andy on his computer, and he looks over and he's all, and I went click, 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 and I put it down. So, and this moment was talked about. So I get the photo. It's a great photo. So we run it as a 2-page spread. And Joel Patterson at the time, and he kind of writes a caption saying, it was Kelly trying to psych out Andy right before they're 1 and 2.
Right.
So this is one of the only times this happened. So I get to Queensland, 2 months later, and I'm at our friend's house, and he goes, "Hey, sure, can I talk to you for a second?" Oh, okay. So he takes me to the pool and he goes, "Why did you tell everyone I was trying to psych out Andy?" And I'm like, "Well, it kind of appeared that way, and you freaked Andy out, and he really thought that we had set him up, But that was one of those situations where only times I'd really had Kelly like really kind of mad at me, and I listen.
I was gonna.
Yeah, so that's
go on.
That's it. So that was one of those times where I really went, wow. I pushed up. I would have done the same thing, but I explained to him. I said, "Listen, Joel's the one that came up. I just took the photo," and I explained to him how freaked out Andy was. But that was one of those times, and yeah, I've had ones where Andy freaked on me too. Like,
right. I was going to ask you. I mean, you've graciously given us that story, but if any particular subject stands out as being like that person got the most mad at me throughout my career.
Okay, well, it was Andy, and it was in Brazil. It was in Brazil, and Kelly was going for his next world title, 5th or 7th.
Okay,
I think it was the 7th. So, and he was coming back. So we're there, and so we got. Me and Jamie Tierney are told there's a party at the Billabong house. So we go over to the party. I walk in, and there's Andy, Bruce, Aki, all the boys playing cards, and it's not a party. So I'm going in there. I go, wow, this is kind of uncomfortable. And Enix there with me. And Enix sees it. So, and all of a sudden, Enix goes, "Sherman, I know why you're fucking here. You're here to capture Kelly winning and beating me, aren't you?" Dude, I know. You're on his team, blah, blah. He gets really mad at me. So Parco picks up my camera. And this is film days. And he starts mocking me shooting photos. Like he's capturing Andy freaking on me. And Andy's in my face. And this is really uncomfortable. So then he's going at me, and I go, "Listen, Andy, man," I go, "don't you remember? I was there for you on all your world titles. Remember the president? I dressed you up like the president. I shot you. Dude, I'm there for you. I'm your friend." And then he goes from being so irate, he goes, "My bad." And he hugs me. And Parco's shooting these photos. I got photos of this. But
are they good photos?
No, they're out of focus, soft, but you can still see what's going on. But you still see what's going on with them. And I cherish them because it was such a real moment. And I'd never seen him that mad with me, ever. But I talked him out of it when he hugged me. He goes, "My bad." And I go, "Oh God, thank God." But that was the worst one I ever felt because I love him dearly. And I felt like, and I knew that, but he was really upset with me I was working for Quicksilver covering Kelly. So,
right.
But that's about the worst one ever. And I have photos of that. But, yeah, you walking that line of friendship and working to cover him is very tough. But at the same time, it gave me the access to capture those intimate moments.
And that's interesting you bring that up, because that's the next place I was going to go in terms of that career trajectory and broadly like how the media landscape evolved at the time. Because you started as, look, I am, as objective as we're going to get, a photojournalist for Transworld or Surfing. You're on assignment for, the Fifth Estate, the media.
Yeah, the
right?
media.
And then that access and the outputs of that access become so valuable that the major brands start going, well, we're going to put content captures on our payroll and we're going to get the benefit, you know? And so as a photographer and a photojournalist like yourself, you kind of have to walk those lines and go, look, you know, we all have a mortgage to pay. I got to work with whoever is going to pay me.
Yeah.
And as you said, you started working for Quicksilver, as did most photographers and filmers.
We
They're
all,
like, well,
yeah.
you know, and it's just, talk us through that a little bit, and if it felt different, or what you think the kind of the result was on the industry when that kind of stuff started happening.
First thing was that happened when Kelly was going to Brazil for that 7th world title, and he hadn't had a world title in a while, and Quicksilver knew I was comfortable with Kelly, and Kelly was comfortable with me, so they gave me a bounty. If he gets it, you get good amount of money for this. And Kelly would later tell me later on that it kind of put pressure on him because he knew I was there waiting for that to happen. But we both got through it. And, but there were times, and I did this like 7, 8, 9, 10. I did this for 4 of his world titles, following him toward the end and trying to capture that moment. And it would happen. And I'd call my wife, Pam from Mendaka. Guess what? We got the bounty. We can pay the mortgage. Thank God. And this happened a lot. And for all these places around the world. And it put a lot of pressure on me. And also it was just pressure to get it. And it's like shooting a wedding. The same thing. That moment's not going to be there ever again. And that's why I was shooting weddings. And this older photographer, he's all, how can you shoot weddings? I go, dude, compared to what I've shot and these world title stuff, it's nothing compared to the pressure of getting a shot of him winning his title and stuff like that. So it helped out a lot, man. It got me through my house payments and stuff, but it was a lot of pressure on both sides. And as I said, Kelly even talked about how he knew it was going on, so it put about that much pressure on him.
Yeah. And as you pointed out, like, I mean, it's impossible not to, when, as you said, it's like, hey, this bounty is going to feed my family and pay for the mortgage. Like, it's impossible at that point to be like, yeah, no, I really want Kelly to win. Like, this is, our fortunes are intertwined here in a way.
Yeah. Fortunes are, yeah. And it's like, Kelly's going to make a little more money than I am winning it, but at the same time, for my world, it was a lot of money. And it was going to help my family. And I had 2 kids, you know, and it's like, so, I mean, and that world's gone. But we had a good run there where we were able to help pay our house payments and, you know, and take care of the kids and do everything we wanted to do in life. And, you know, but it's a lot different now. It's a lot different world.
Well, it's even moved on, I'd argue, too, from, like, it went from, okay, the media, independent media.
Oh, see, look at Andy just fell back on my head. That's him up back, looking at me going, Sherman, you're talking about me. I'm just saying.
Yeah, let's tell some better stories. But he's always watching.
I love you.
There's like one of those little like Jesus stickers that say "I saw that" people stick on the bathroom. We should get them with Andy just being like, "I saw that."
Yeah.
For the surfing world, but
Saint
like
Andy.
What you were talking about is interesting, right? Because we went from
I think Andy's
independent media, more or less, with like journalists and photographers covering the happenings in the surfing world, to, as you pointed out, the brands going, well, access is the most important thing, so we're going to poach these people. And it wasn't just photographers, it was journalists too, and they're going to tell our brand story, and we're going to have exclusive access around our talent. To fast forward 10, 15 years, that's not really happening anymore, and the individual athletes themselves are kind of media entities unto themselves, right?
Yes.
And so it's more than likely they have photographers that just shoot them, or filmers that just film them. You know?
That happens a lot. That's definitely, everyone does,
right?
And also, you know, and the WSL, they have control. You know, they want to. That's their business, so they've eliminated that of a lot of that stuff too. So it's a weird world.
It's interesting. I mean, I think that I agree, and obviously I've been there long enough to have seen the different eras as well. I think there's a recalibration, and I'm not trying to speak out of school, but that kind of has to happen to create space for really good storytellers and content captures to exist, and for third parties to tell that story as well. I think the WSL, at the end of the day, one person's opinion, has to go, we are a platform for the world's best surfing. We crown the men's, women's world champions every year, right? Yeah. That's our role and that's our identity. And for sure, there is media and storytelling around that in our business. But I think there's a huge benefit to creating that space to have world-class third-party storytellers do their jobs and tell that story. And the relationship becomes so much more symbiotic at that point. I'd like to see it recalibrate kind of back. But back to what we were talking about before, did you ever shift from, being on a retainer at a brand and getting that bounty to, I'm freelance now, I'm independent, I'm just working directly with the athletes?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, those retainer moments were very rare, actually.
Right.
And Quicksilver had, the pockets to do that and to buy the imagery outright. And but no, I mean, my whole life it's always been, you get the goods, and then you got to figure out what to do with them, where to go with them, and then I'm thinking, what's going to be good for the surfer? Is it okay? There's a lot of calculations that go in all that stuff. But back what you're saying about capturing, so I think I have to agree with you on that. That it's got to be a bigger page than just having certain people shooting these things, to tell the story about what's going on and how the world title is being done and stuff. Not just me, but other photographers and photojournalists and famous people who are good at, and famous writers to tell these stories. I just think it's a little homogenized, as we talk. You say that word.
Sure.
Capturing it, so it's really hard. And when sometimes you have to let a little control go to get a fresh, edgy perspective on anything. And
I think it goes back to what we were saying before, where it's like you get different points of view and different perspectives, all orbiting the same topic, and that point of difference and that energy and that tension does create something really radical. I've told this story on the podcast before, but I grew up kind of in suburbia in Orange County and came to surfing on my own. And one of the things that really excited me about it was reading the magazines and watching the movies, because it felt like it was a window to just, we've used the word a few times, but something that was not homogenized, that wasn't kind of the suburban experiment gone awry. It was like, these are different people and different cultures with different ideas. I'm like, that's really cool. Surfing in itself is really cool, but this is like a vessel to get to that. And I think what happened, and this is well before the acquisition, I think it was sort of the mid-aughties, it just felt like the surfing industrial complex, everyone can drink, whether that's the media or the brands or the ASP or whatever, it felt like it just kind of disappeared up its own ass. It just got so self-referential, and it wasn't expansive. It was just insular.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a real missed opportunity for everybody, where it's like, hey, this is a cool thing to bring other people in and tell diverse stories.
Exactly. And surfing by nature is a little rebellious. And already surfers are very rebellious people. And when you used to have these different, magazines or doing these stories that weren't approved by the upper, then you get it's fresh. And it's also, now you don't see, there's still critiques of the WSL, but you don't really see a lot of that kind of thing going on as much. Maybe, but then again, now with the webcasts and stuff on social media, you guys get a lot of slack. But I'm talking about just the covering of events and world titles and things like that, and the photos that look different, and the good, the bad, the ugly, which I love. I love those three words, because that's what photojournalism is. It's everything.
No, I totally agree. And I would say it's not just like a WSL thing. I think you see it across the industry with
Yeah,
the talent themselves and
yeah,
with the brands. And
I agree.
and to your point, it's like, I don't know, the surfing community fancies itself as progressive nonconformist from like its like
Yeah,
outlaw roots.
that's
But
what.
I'm like, man, I see so much like conservative pearl clutching go on across the board every day, and it's like, you guys need to relax. Like, this is
Yeah,
supposed to be fun.
with just the advertising alone, the advertising
Right.
campaigns are so conservative. I mean, there's no more of that rock. I always go back to this word rock and roll, but it's edged, but I don't think a lot of these kids are really leading a rock and roll lifestyle, however you want to call it. Maybe that's the way it
Right.
is, and I don't even think the alternative. Maybe the alternative guys a little bit, but I don't know. There's all kind of stuff that comes in the vestige with the thing called rock and roll. And I
Right.
love using that because that just sums me up of a cool, of looking cool, of being cool, having a cool lifestyle, talking about cool things, doing cool things, drinking cool things or taking cool things, whatever it is. But it seems homogenized. I think that we're definitely in a weird time with surfing right now. And
Well, and I mean, let's be fair too, because like the 100% rebellion and like rock and roll, like that comes with plenty of casualties too, you know?
for sure,
And we both experienced those like personally, right? And so I
very
think
much so.
that it's a difficult balance, but I think you're right. Like, I think what's the phrase, like focus group to death? Like a lot of it feels like
Oh,
that these days, where you're like, man,
yeah,
everyone's stuff looks the same and sounds the same and all that. And I just want to change tracks for a sec,
yeah,
because you brought up something before that I think was really worthy of talking about. And, you know, we both toured for a number of years. You probably toured way longer than I did, actually. But as you said, like, it's so emotional when someone stops touring, whether they're a surfer or a photographer or a judge or whoever, right?
yeah,
And a lot of time, like I always, people are like, well, how'd you get started? I'm like, well, I just ran away and joined the circus, the coolest circus I could find, and it becomes, as you pointed out, like it becomes a bit of a family, dysfunctional at times, but like,
yeah.
and when someone stops touring, it leaves a real impact. Or when you yourself, or me myself, like I had to go through quite a lot of personal work just to kind of level out, because you're going, oh, I'm on the road 11 months of the year. Like my life's there, and when for whatever reason, when people stop doing that, it's like, well, that's a huge change. I was doing it so long, I never saw it coming. And I'm wondering if you had a similar experience with yourself.
Yeah, I did. Well, the thing was like my family. I missed a lot of family time because I was out
Hmm.
on the road, and I wasn't working for the WSL. I was working for everyone, doing ad work.
Right.
Fine, and I would beg, cheat, and steal to get anywhere. I'd get a job from
Hmm.
here to go Peter to pay Paul. Um, then, so then the magazines all just disappeared. Boom.
Hmm.
And then we had and then the ad work started, kind of went away. Then pandemic. So my world radically changed, like radically. No more traveling, and no more retainers. No,
Hmm.
I mean, and my income just started going like this. It just went down. So I
Yeah.
went through a big shift, and I'd be lying to say if I didn't go through a mental shift. I was like, what's
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
on? I'm asking myself, who am I? What do I have to offer anymore? Um, but you got to pick yourself up, and then you got to pick yourself up, and you go, okay. I'm a photographer. I was a photographer before I started shooting surfing. So,
Hmm.
I realized that, and now I'm a hustler, but I definitely went through a radical change. I was traveling a lot. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
if you ask my kids, Dad left a lot, and Pam
Yeah.
picked up the slack, and Pam let me pursue my dream. And so
Yeah.
now I'm trying to give back a little bit and help just be there more for my kid. My boys are older, and Pam with the restaurant. I'm trying just to let her be in charge and let her be part of it and let me support, because I got a lot of support from my mom and dad with the kids, but traveling, it's crazy all the time. Hawaii every year, Australia, France, Europe, all that stuff. And it was like, I was doing the same thing. I wasn't gone all the time, but there was a good chunk of the year I was gone, and now I'm home. But to tell you the truth, I don't mind being home. I love where I live. There was a point where I was never home for October in California, and I love this time of the year. It's my best time. Fall, offshore, the waves get good. I love it. And I would be in Europe and missing it all.
Which is fun too.
Which is, nice. Don't get me wrong, that's fun too. But I appreciate, now I'm a little older, and my boys are, they're at home. My son's back home, but the boys are older now, but I missed a lot. And we all do as parents, just keeping the dream alive.
Hey, they're here now. You got to pay for them. The Ryan Callanan was on the podcast a while ago, actually, and he said something that I thought was really profound, because he was talking about he has like very serious like knee issues that it almost ended his career, and then he had to figure out how to deal with it. And part of dealing with it was, especially in the beginning, being really conservative with how much he was surfing. And he said, the hardest part is that surfing is so fun, and it's a hard thing to say no to, because it's like,
oh God,
another contest, another wave, another photo trip, another session. And I'm like, and he goes, I had to like develop the muscle to say no so I could do this forever. And I'm like, man, that's so true, because I'm sure we're in a similar boat where it's like, I have to work. I need the money. But someone's like, do you want to go to Bali for work? You're like, yeah. Do you want to go to France for work? It's like, yeah.
Yes.
And it's, I don't think it's like other industries or careers, because it's like, as you said, you're like, we're pursuing a dream in a way where this is so much fun. But like you, like, I think the pandemic for sure, like I was traveling a lot less because of the kids, which I was fortunate enough to be able to do. But like the pandemic stopped, and it was like, I'd never been in one place for so long, not in like 20 years.
Yeah.
And I remember like I'd get up some days and be like, oh, like winter's over and spring's here because it's warmer, and feel like that's so nice. I'm like, I never noticed that for like 2 decades, because you're like in and out. And you're like, I don't know what season it is or why it's darker earlier or whatever.
You know what? But I'm a firm believer in destiny. It's a simple thing. But I have a lot of friends who are rockers, rock and roll guys.
Right. Yeah.
And
sure.
For the first time in their, like Lucas Nelson, for the first time in their lives, they were home, not doing a damn thing. And it was kind of like, that was, God said, okay, everyone needs to slow down and regroup, realize what life's like, how lucky we are to go do that. And now all these guys are back on the road, and they're refreshed, and they're appreciating it. And I know when I go on a trip now, man, I went to Bali last year with my boys just to go. And I just thought we went 3 weeks, and I loved every minute of it. I appreciate every moment of it. When I was traveling for work, I was a little burnt out, and you get jaded, and so, but as I said, that everything happens for a reason. I'm convinced of that. And when it happens in your professional life, but I think everyone got through it, but things are different now. Things are different, but I'm a hustler, and I'm making it, but I'm also very lucky. My wife my wife works too. And she makes a lot of sacrifices, and she still does, for me to be able to do what I do. I don't want to get a job at Walmart. I can't, but I don't know. If push comes to shove, you got to do what you got to do for your kids when you have kids. But anyway, that's but I'm lucky right now. I'm selling a lot of my archive, and during the pandemic, I started tapping into my archive and selling a lot of stuff through Instagram, and people love it. And now it's kind of
hold on to that thought, because I want to dive into that just a little bit in the next segment. But we're going to take one more quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. This is the lineup. I'm Dave Prodan here with Steve Sherman. Sherman, I appreciate this conversation so much. And right before this last break, you started touching on something I think is really important, because you as a professional have had to live through so many different eras, not only in the surfing world, but in the broader kind of media landscape world and as a professional, and you've had to evolve and adapt. And one thing that I've noticed a lot, having known you for as long as I have, is you've really mined your archive, because it's some of the best photography in surfing. And it feels like this stage of your career, you're able to pull out the meaningful pieces and create story and opportunity around them. Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Just how you've transitioned into that in this part of your career.
Well, I transitioned because I have a deep archive from surfing, but my archive of Kelly alone is so vast. I mean, it's so much stuff, intimate stuff, that to be quite honest, I thought my boys would go to college on that. I go, yeah, this is I'll be able to, but the damn guy hasn't retired yet. He's going to retire when my kids are out of college. But what I've done was, I'm lucky enough that I have blessings from him and like Andy's family and Eddie Vedder lets me tell. I'm able to sell stuff with them, with their blessing, which is huge. But my archive from skateboarding stuff alone is big too. I have Tony Hawk stuff, but really during the pandemic, I really decided to pursue it. And I love what I love doing is getting frames, buying antique frames, old frames, and I tear them apart, repaint them, whatever I got to do, and then I put beautiful photographs in them, and then I sell them for very reasonable. I sell them for like, $250, $300, and I make some money, but I'm also able to take care of the blue collar surf fan. And Ohana, last year we did these big blow ups, and we sold them for like 1,000 each, and we sold a few, but I said this year, you know what? I want people to show up and see themselves in the audience and be able to buy that and take it home. The people were for $300 and take it off the wall, and I sold a lot. So I want my work. I know my work is worth something, but at the same time, I want people to be able to afford it and to sell more. And and that's the approach I've taken. And I always use the word blue collar, because the blue collar fans, whether they're blue collar Eddie Vedder fans, blue collar surf fans, and also people they love with me is that they get to talk with me. I talk, they go, oh my God, you're selling this to me directly? I'm like, yeah. And then sometimes they come by my garage at my parents' house and they pick stuff up, and there's my archive. And I do a lot of lives where I call it From the Bunker. And people at Ohana, I had like 8 people go, man, you got to do more live from your bunker. People get a kick out of that because it's intimate. And when stories and intimacy meets imagery, people want it, and it adds to it. So I've learned a lot, and I've also, I've got a little older. I'm just a little more appreciative of things, and also I've gotten a lot better at public speaking. I mean, if you'd have told me 20 years ago I'd be really good at doing slideshows, and now I am completely comfortable with talking with 500 people and on a microphone, and entertaining and talking about it. So, and I'm very proud of that. And that's what this War and Peace slideshow does, is that it's a rush. And I learned, the first thing I learned when I do these, as soon as you make them laugh once, you got them. And then it breaks the ice. So you want to make them laugh, but and life's about evolution. I've evolved. I'm 60 years old, and I've evolved. And you can learn things when you're older. And I'm also very fortunate to what I've done in this world. I'm very fortunate. My boys love what I do, and my family. So, and I have friends like you. And what I want to say about you, I love about you, and people don't know this about Dave, is that we both do this to surf. We're both hardcore surfers. We love surfboards, right? That's what drives us. I don't think you play golf. I don't play golf. You know why?
I don't know.
You know why? Because it takes time away from our family and surfing. Family first, then surfing. That's how we both live, and that's how Dave lives too. And that's why we were on the tour all the time. We always were, taking board. The best part we get to do is I call it arms running, where you're taking boards to Kelly for Channel Islands. You're traveling with, and one time I went to Bali and I'm bringing Kelly's board. This is real, and I had this CI board bag, and some guy had taken it because he had one like it, but it was all beat up, and he took it. And I'm going, oh my God. So I look at the guys behind, I go, Kelly Slater surfboard is somewhere out there. And these security, they ran out there and they found it. But that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, but arms running. I love being with surfboards, moving surfboards, and that's what you do too. So I just want people to know that we're all surfers. That's it.
I love it. Well, and Sherm, so for folks that can't make the War and Peace showing but want to get like a Steve Sherman print, like where should they go? Should they find you on social media? Is there a website?
Social media, Instagram. I like the Instagram. It's beautiful. It's fast. It's easy. And so my @tsherms, plural, that's my Instagram. And if you follow me, I do a lot of live. I'll go in my mom and dad's garage where my archive is, and I'll walk around and go, oh, I got this photo, and I'll show my messes, my skateboards from the 70s. But that's the best place to go. And like Ohana right now, I'm selling prints all week because I met a bunch of people, and they're going to that. So @tsherms on my Instagram is the way to get a hold of me. And if you can make it to Del Mar on this Saturday, October 7th, 3 o'clock, I'm going to be there telling my stories. And we'll see. So, you never know who's going to show up. I'm not going to say who might show up, but there's sometimes I get surprise guests, so it might be that too. Yeah.
I love it. Good teaser. And I love that you brought up @tsherms on Instagram, because we put a feeler out for questions from our listeners. And at the Lineup Pod, we got a ton back.
Wow.
We got a ton back, but we're only gonna do 3.
Okay.
We're gonna save on time.
That's the best. I love that.
First question is from @Matson Colbert, who asks, who was the most difficult person to get photos of in surfing, and who was the easiest?
Okay, I'm going to be honest with this. The hardest, Jack Freestone. Only because he shot once with me for Nixon, right? So I'm going to tell the story because the thing can't stab, but he was the only guy. So I'm working for Paizel, and I wanted to shoot photos, and Jack told me, no, I got another guy shooting it. And then John Paizel asked him to shoot, and he said no. And I basically said, you're the first person that's ever denied me like that. So I just found that bizarre. I think he had someone else working for him, like my friend, but that one just stuck out. And I was like, and John was just, in this case, there's a big story on Stab about that with the DHC. So, and I like Jack, and he's a nice guy, but I got to say, that really blew my mind. The easiest, well, a lot of them are easy. Kelly. I love shooting photos with Kelly because he trusts me. And I think what I like about Kelly was he always gives something back. He'll go, hey, let's try this. And when a subject gives you an idea, you run with it. So I'm going to say Kelly, and like one time for a 7th world title, I'm shooting him at in the garage in Hasagor. And I go, I want you to put your arms out like this and close your eyes. And there's this Soundgarden song called Jesus Christ Pose, which I love. And I go, it's like a Jesus Christ Pose, Soundgarden. And he's all, I don't know, Sherm, I don't know where you're going with this, but I'll do it. And he did it. And then it ended up being a 2-page spread. And we ran the 7th coming of Kelly Slater. So that's the kind of thing where you work with people. You want people who are open. And Andy said the same thing. He's all, Sherm, you always make me look good. I'll never deny you. So there you go.
Good answers. I appreciate the candor, and obviously Jack's been taking it a little bit out in the public, but I will say this. I've worked with Jack quite a lot. He's been nothing but a gentleman,
and he always was with me,
humble and wonderful every time. I'm not saying that to deny you.
And I want to say this too about Jack. He has shot photos of me before, but at that point in my life when I was doing this, it really screwed me up mentally.
No, I get you.
And also with this getting together. But as we said, sorry, Jack, you have a tough month with that stuff. Okay, next.
Second question is from @D Menilau, who asks, what is your perfect camera setup?
The funny thing is, I am not a big camera guy per se. 5D Mark IV is my camera right now. And I love it because it shoots very little noise at high ISO, so you can shoot in low lighting. And so the 5D Mark IV is a beautiful camera, but I'm not a camera geek. I'm far from it. It's just a tool to me. And Kelly used to say, I treat my surfboards better than I treat my cameras because I'm just rough with them and they're just tools to me. But the Canon 5D Mark IV is good, and my old Hasselblads I use. All Hasselblads I shot a lot of historical photos with are beautiful lenses, and the Leica lenses are good too. Any Leica lens you get with a digital camera is going to be insane.
Great answer. Third question that we've pulled from the many at the Lineup Pod is from Ethan_Sherman, who asks, which son is the more stylish surfer?
That's so funny. Well, my boys are both stylish surfers, but you got to say, Ethan's got a pretty good style. God, that little rat. But yeah, my sons are great. The funny thing I got to tell my sons is they didn't surf much when they were younger, at all. Both my kids were football players. So Ethan started surfing, and when he was around 13, maybe, and then Tosh started surfing hardcore when he was about 18 or 19. So if you would have told me that at this point in my life, I'd be taking my boys to Bali, and we'd be surfing shallow reefs and fighting for our lives together in the front line, I would have said, no way. But I'm very lucky that my boys are hardcore surfers now, and I love it. And both my boys are stylish surfers, but Ethan's got a little edge because he's regular foot. So that's for his DNA. I look like me.
I like it. I like it. Well, thanks to everyone that wrote in at the Lineup.
Yeah, thank you.
We're now down to our final segment. It's time for the lightning round.
Okay.
So here are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can.
Okay.
First question. If you could only have one board setup for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
4-fin.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Espresso.
Burrito. Okay. Burrito or pizza?
Pizza. Love pizza.
Last book you read?
That would be Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas again. I love that book.
Best surf film ever?
Free Ride.
One wave you never have to go back to?
It would probably be Desert Point because I got the wave of my life there. And yeah, so it's a long way to get there, but I don't have to go back there. J-Bay too.
Did that one.
Yeah.
If you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life, which would it be?
Jeffreys Bay. Incredible wave.
Best person to share a lineup with?
Eddie Vedder, and I've never surfed with him, but I think I'd like to go surfing with him because he's regular foot, and I'd want to go surf with him, and I haven't done that yet. So
worst person to share the lineup with?
I'm gonna say this because I love him, Gabriel Medina, only because the guy just takes it. He's there every wave. And I love him as a person, but he is the toughest guy I've ever surfed with. And God, is he good. He's so good, but man, he's Brazilian.
He comes up on this podcast a lot. Last one. Okay, finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by...
being a great husband and continue to be a surfer for the rest of my life.
Sherm, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for the friendship, man. And everyone should check out at T-Sherms on Instagram, buy some prints, go to the talk stories. Man, I'm, as I said, I was a fan before we even met, and it's been one of the privileges of my professional career to get to meet you and know you, man.
Oh, dude, you've been an ally and a good friend on tour. And as I said, I've made it. I'm on the podcast, and I love this. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, man. I appreciate it.